That's right. That's right. Yeah, good. Good. Thank you for doing this. This is just beautiful. You know, I just hang out here all the time. I think. Yeah.
My question is, how do you think the city votes is going to go?
Well, I think we'll do fine there. We're in media now, and what our polling data shows us, we're polling again this week, so we'll get a take on what's happened in the last 3 or 4 weeks here. But um, the electorate across the state is they're not happy with Marshall. And so the way my pollster says it, he said this to the president. He said her support's a mile wide and an inch deep, and so they don't. A lot of them don't necessarily dislike her, but they just don't think she should be the governor.
I've been up in East Tennessee, and I just feel a big cloud up there.
Yeah.
I got a lot of folks.
Temple wasn't here to open mine.
I will say that you've got the edge
He has
because
a.
of who you are and what you represent.
Hey
But
there.
she's going to get Walker for letting us use this beautiful place here.
Okay.
I'd like to thank Jana helping me with this, put it together and everything. But we give it a lot of thought, and
So that's no good anymore.
anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming. We've got people here from, I know, 4 counties,
Clarify that with them.
and
Mark it out.
really glad to see a crowd of this size. And just everybody go ahead and continue eating. And I guess we're going to do some things a little later on, but personally, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming. And I'm going to let Jana say a few words.
Because they know how good it is. So go out and patronize in these restaurants too. He's got a thing coming up on Saturday. It's a memorial in honor of his deceased wife. And it's gonna be a cook-off, and it's gonna be a great occasion. It's gonna be the 2nd annual, and it'll last all day. And I'd like for all y'all to come out and support that. I grew up on a farm. I've always had cows, pigs, all kinds of things. Helped my dad roll hay. And I can relate to John because he's a farmer. And we need somebody like John in there that can relate to us as ordinary people. We don't need somebody in there that knows all about highfalutin stuff and don't know how to talk to normal people, because most of us are just normal people. And so I'm supporting him, and I hope all you will get behind him if you aren't already, and give him all your support and talk to all your friends and neighbors, and we need to get him elected.
I had him one of these back in August of 25 in Manchester, and there was about 35 or 40 people there. And I am really glad it turned out tonight. But the reason I'm supporting him is for the same reason. He was in the FFA. I'm an old FFA student way back, quite a bit older than he is. But that's one of the reasons. And he's a farmer. He's going to help people in rural areas, which the other two I don't think would ever do that. And so that's one of the reasons I'm supporting. Plus, he's got a good-looking wife. I'm going to turn it over to Terry Little and Janice for a minute.
Who's going to do the pledge? Who's
Sam.
going to do the pledge?
Sam.
All right. He's ready. We're ready for the pledge.
Yeah.
Sam, will come forward and do the pledge. Flag.
Sam would like you all to stand, and he's going to lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Congratulations.
Now, Mr. Dale Woods, the farm bureau president, will come forward to say a blessing.
Good job, man.
We need to understand that we live in a country with good rulers and all that, but we have a supreme ruler, and he's going to call all the shots one day. So let's go to the Lord in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this day. We ask you to bless the food that's been partaken or been partaken. Thank you for that opportunity. Thank you for the bounty of what we have. Lord, as the Bible tells us that we deal with principalities and powers that we don't understand. There's a lot of companies, there's a lot of things going on in our world that's trying to destroy our rural life. Lord, we need a man that can stand for us, that understands what rural life means and what it means to us. Please bless this campaign, bless our evening, keep us safe in our travels home. And once again, Lord, we thank you for your Son who died on the cross for our sins. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Dale Woods has been trying for.
As the Warren County Executive, I'd love to welcome everybody to Warren County. And I want to tell you a little story about Mr. John Rose. As the county executive, he only has 300 voters in Warren County. It's all he serves as a representative. We come up on the situation where our VA clinic was fixing to close. So one night I had Mr. Rose's number, so I sent him a text. I said, we need help in Washington. We need somebody to stand up for our veterans, to help keep our veterans clinic from closing. The next morning, I got a phone call. They were on the case and working on it. And John has reached out to me numerous times over this and helped us keep the clinic from closing. Now, we'll need some more help in Washington, but that just goes to show you, he was working for everybody in Warren County to make sure our veterans still had a clinic. And we're really proud of that. Also, I'm a farmer myself. So I feel it's important that we keep a farmer and the governor's office to support the rural economies and make things grow. So if you can, please support this man. Thank you.
I don't think I need that. I think we're going to push it here. Can you hear me? I want to thank you all for coming. This is a beautiful Monday afternoon, but look around. This is a crowd for a Monday afternoon. And I think that's because we all realize that this governor's race is coming up fast. And it's time for us to fish or cut bait, and I think most of us have decided that we are going to vote for John Rose. Have you all decided? I know John, I was thinking about it, John, it's been almost 30 years and maybe a little over. I don't know what happened to the time, but he has continued to do all those things that I knew he would do. And he is an outstanding congressman, but his heart is in Tennessee. He was raised right over the hill, as y'all know. He has been a farm boy. He has loved this county and this state and the very people that make Tennessee great. And right now, do you ever wake up and wonder if we're about to lose Tennessee a little bit? I think that a lot of us hear things that are going on, and we look and we say, that's not the Tennessee of 10 years ago, and certainly not the Tennessee of 20 years ago. So we want to do those things that are still progressive, but that they don't lose sight of who we are and why we're proud to be called Tennesseans. The love of God, the love of family, the love of freedom. And those are the things, the faith, family, and freedom, that John really emphasizes in his character and in his campaign. So I want y'all to please make welcome John Rose, the next governor of the state of Tennessee. Oh, God bless you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Are y'all hearing me? Yes. Very good. Thank you, Senator Bowling. That was very, very kind introduction. And Executive Bell, thank you. It is a pleasure to be with you. And gosh, what a beautiful setting we are here to enjoy this afternoon. Let's give a big hand to the Walkers for hosting this. I might just decide not to go home and just stay here, and I'm sure they'd be fine with that, right? If we just move in and live here somewhere close by. So I really appreciate that. And Mr. Prater, thank you for your participation in this tonight. And I know he's my little boy, but didn't Sam do a good job? Well, it's great to be with you again. Thank you all for coming out today. And Sheriff, good to see you. And so we're very proud to have you all here and to talk about the future of our state. Many of you know me, and so I'll do a kind of an abbreviated introduction today. And so proud to have Chelsea here with me, clearly my better half, as is so often we get guys wanted my coverage, Executive Bell, and no question about that. But I am the youngest of children, born in 1965 in Cookeville, Tennessee, and So happy to have my big sister, older sister, Radonna, here with me tonight. And many know Radonna. Probably most of you know her better than you know me, I suspect. She spent 37 years at Tennessee Farm Bureau and obviously made her little brother proud through her service there. Youngest of four, grew up in Cookeville, attended public schools there at a very young age. My mom was a school teacher. She had become a full-time mom. By the time I came along, my dad was a farmer and worked for Cookeville Production Credit Association. And I know there are many people here who know the PCA story, Farm Credit Today. And at a young age, I'd got it in my blood or in my mind that I wanted to be the 8th generation of our family to farm the farm we have that Chelsea and I are proud to be the custodians of today in Smith County and DeKalb County. Our farm straddles the county line there. My forebears came here in 1790, so I'm the 8th generation, 236 years ago. By the way, today is this state's 230th birthday. So let's give a big round to our state. And attended public schools, was active in 4-H and then later the FFA. And I know there are lots of FFA members, as Mr. Prater pointed out, lots of FFA people here today. I wouldn't be sitting in front of you had it not been for my involvement in the Future Farmers of America, no question about it. And so it's been my great honor to get to support and work hard to try to build support for the FFA through the years. Senator Bowling's been a great part about helping to do that in her role at state government, and she is a stalwart supporter as well. Attended Tennessee Tech University, studied agricultural economics there, and then later at Purdue, and then went on to Vanderbilt Law School. I sometimes hesitant to admit this, but I'm a recovering lawyer, and went to law school because I wasn't sure. Our farm is not quite as fertile and productive as this land looks like it is. We're down in the Central Basin, and we've got a few limestone rocks down there, if y'all have been around Temperance Hall and Lancaster. So I thought I needed to have maybe a fallback position, so I thought I could be a country lawyer. That was the plan. But as fate would have it, while I was at law school, a fellow law school student came to me one day with a business idea. And the idea was in the IT space, the information technology, computer software. And I heard the idea, and I thought it was a pretty strong idea, and I was immediately impressed that we might like to do this. He said, "Do you want to go in with me to do this?" And so we started a business while I was at law school. And we pulled ourselves up by the bootstraps, as they say, and we started that business, and we were very successful. Now, it was in computer science, computer technology, and neither one of us had a lick of training or experience in that space. Senator Bowling, I say sometimes, neither one of us were smart enough to know we couldn't do what we were trying to do. And we, as is so often the case, after several years of working on this, we were an overnight success. So during the 90s, we trained over 4.5 million IT professionals around the world. And that success allowed me to buy the farm and keep it in the family. So continue that long legacy. I say to my boys, Guy and Sam, Guy's not with us today. He's at camp this week. And I say to them, no pressure, just 236-year unbroken streak. We hope they'll keep going. So that's my story. I woke up in the 2000s and realized I had conquered the farm part of the family farm, but I had not done much work on the family side. And so I'd like to take credit for finding this young lady, but the truth is she found me. We got married over 15 years ago, proud to have these two boys, and I am truly blessed. So that's kind of my story. I ran for Congress back in 2018 because I came to the harsh conclusion that our generation, I'll throw us all in together except for you young folks that are here, we're at risk of passing this country on to the next generation in worse condition than our parents left it to us. If we do that, we'll be the first generation of Americans to do that. And I don't think that's acceptable. That's why I ran for Congress. But I also believed when I ran, and Chelsea and I both agreed about this and talked about it a lot when we were thinking about whether or not to make the run for Congress, that you don't go to Washington and stay forever. My view is that Washington is a pretty corrosive place. And we've all seen examples of people who've stayed there too long. And so we agreed then that you'd stay for a period of come home. That's what the framers, the founders wanted. And so we talked about how long that should be, and we ultimately settled on about 8 years. That's what George Washington did. He served for president for 2 terms, 8 years, and then he went home to Mount Vernon. And so we decided that was the pattern we wanted to follow. So last year I announced on March 20th that I'm coming home at the end of this term. I'm going to finish the work I started because my dad taught me you finish the jobs you start. You don't take a job and then immediately try to get a different one and quit the one that people gave you and entrusted to you. So I'm going to finish the job you gave me and the people of the 6th District gave me and serve through January 3rd of next year. But I also think I've got some service left in me, and I think this is a challenging time for our state. We're blessed as a state. We're in so many ways, we're doing better here because of the leadership of people like Senator Janice Bowling. We're doing better than, and your mayor here, we're doing better as a state than the federal government's doing. But we've got our own challenges, right? We have low debt, low taxes, favorable regulations. We're friendly folks. But as you've heard on some of our TV advertisements, we got 500 people a day. Think about that. 500 a day coming to Tennessee. And every hour we're losing, and look at this landscape and think about this, we're losing 10 acres of farmland every hour of every day, of every week, of every year. Think about that. So we've got these challenges, and there are other challenges facing our state. We'll talk about some more tonight. That's why I'm running for governor. And I hope, I'll say this again, hopefully before the night is done, I hope you'll give me a chance to earn your vote, and I do ask for your vote.
I'm Chelsea, and I am grateful to be John's wife and mom to Samuel, who bravely came forward a moment ago. Thank you, Sam, and to Guy. And it's so fitting that we're here today on the 230th anniversary of Tennessee's statehood, because what we should be thinking about as a generation is the 230-year mark that is to come. So where will we be at our 460th day of statehood? What will the state of Tennessee look like for future generations? And think about the sacrifice that the Tennesseans who came before us have made to ensure that we have a state that's worth handing down, one that's worth defending and protecting. John and I believe that we live in the greatest state, in the greatest nation in the history of the world. We're unashamed to be Americans, and we're quite proud to be Tennesseans. I believe that our nation deserves a leader who is not going to apologize for our country, but will lead boldly, and our state needs the same thing. We need a man who is resolute about his beliefs, who's convicted about your constitutional rights and freedoms, and who understands that Tennessee is succeeding and thriving because we have put some values before others that some states have put in the background because they are apologetic for what our country is. Senator Bowling mentioned these a moment ago. They're faith, family, and freedom. And as long as in Tennessee we can live by those values, I believe that this state will continue to be one that we can be proud to pass on to the next generation. But the only way we do that is through effective leadership and citizens who are actively involved in defending and guarding and promoting this state. And so I'm here tonight supporting my favorite candidate for governor because I'll tell you this, God blessed me with an incredible husband, one that I had prayed for years, that my mom prayed for from the day I was born, more than 15 years ago when we got married. And I know from observing him that he is someone who has the work ethic of a farmer, the skills and savvy of a man who has built 2 successful businesses from the ground up. He has the compassion of a father, and he has the conviction of a devoted Christian. And so tonight, I'm glad and honored that you've brought your questions, concerns, and ideas for this state to this table, because I think you will like what you hear. What you're going to hear is unscripted, unfiltered, and and it will directly address your concerns. And if it doesn't, please hang around afterwards and ask any and all questions, because he has my permission as well to just stay here as long as he wants, if that's okay. We'll just keep him here if that's all right with the walkers. So thank you for joining us tonight.
I keep forgetting I have this mic. I keep thinking I've got to hand the mic here. Now that we have really been introduced to John, and aren't you glad you came, and aren't you glad you got to Chelsea as well? These are real people who are willing to just come unscripted and to look you in the eye and answer your questions. And right now, though, we do have several questions to start with to kind of break the ice. And I'm going to ask them those, and John will answer. And then we will have Terry Bell, Mayor Terry Bell, to ask some questions. And then we're going to open it up. So be thinking of anything that you really would like to know or like to ask John. But first, at the growth rate Tennessee is facing, how do you promote responsive growth while maintaining the values of Tennesseans? And what are your thoughts on the $30 million Starbucks deal?
Well, thank you. And this is the sort of things that I've been hearing across the state. You know, I know Mr. Grissom over here was there last March the 20th. It was a little cooler that day in Lebanon, Tennessee, at the Tennessee State Fairgrounds when we announced that we're running. But that day, and that kind of puts in context why we're sitting here at a table today. But that day when I announced I was running for governor, I said, I'm coming to see you. And we've been to all 95 counties, and now we've started this tour, the Tennessee True Tour, and we're making our way back across the state, visiting every county. And this is our 17th tour stop already, just in the last month. And so why? Because it's not about what Chelsea and I want for the future of Tennessee. It's about what you want. And the only way we can know that is to hear from you. So what are we hearing from Tennesseans as I respond to this question? Number one, they want a governor who will listen. Turns out our instincts about that were right. Number two, they want someone who will take those conservative values, faith, family, and freedom, and apply them to taking on the issues and challenges facing Tennessee. And then number three, and I think this is what really plugs into this question, is that Tennesseans are worried about our state. They're worried about the nature and quality of our state. They're worried about the growth that we're seeing. Not just the natural beauty of Tennessee, but certainly that, but they're worried about our way of life and the values that we commonly share, that come to us from our shared Christian beliefs and background. And so those are the things they want to see the next governor take on. And they want a governor who will stand up to the big corporate interests. You know, and I will tell you, that's one of those things that I'm proud to say, is that if you want to know who I answer to, it's to me and my wife and to you, and not some corporate donors. I'm the biggest supporter of our campaign. And so you don't have to worry about whether we'll be doing what the folks from California or Washington, D.C. or Georgia or Florida want, because they gave us all the money that we're using, because we're not getting our money from those places. Most of our contributions, thank you, I'm going to put that hat on to get the sun out of my eyes here, I hope. But most of our contributions are coming from Tennesseans or from us. And so then you specifically asked about Starbucks, and I'll use that as the way to kind of address the broader question. You know, y'all may have heard here just in recent days that Tennessee, through its Department of Economic and Community Development, the commissioner there, who supports one of my opponents, by the way, has made the decision that they're going to give $30 million of our money to Starbucks to build a new corporate headquarters for the Southeast here in Tennessee. $30 million of our taxpayer money. Now, Starbucks is a big national brand, and maybe some of you enjoy drinking Starbucks coffee. I'm not a big coffee drinker, but here's the thing. If Starbucks wants to come to Tennessee, maybe that's okay. But do we give them $30 million to come here and bring 2,000 of their people? Let's think about that, and let's think about who Starbucks is. Starbucks is generally regarded as one of the most woke and you asked me 8 or 10, 12 years ago, I wouldn't have even known what woke meant, but I think I understand now. One of the most liberal companies in the country. They advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and environmental and social governance issues all the time. They lead on those things. For goodness sakes, it's a Seattle, Washington-based company, and they've made Seattle, Washington so liberal that no one wants to live there anymore. At least none of us want to go there. A lot of people are escaping from there to come to places like Tennessee. And so do we want to spend our money to bring them here? And I tell you that we need a governor who's willing to step up and say, no, we're not doing that.
That's exactly right. And I would also just point out that Starbucks doesn't need our money. And could we use that $30 million better than Starbucks is going to use it to relocate? Yes. Now, no doubt, John understands economic development. Yes, there are times when you're going to help a company come into Tennessee because they're going to create jobs for Tennesseans. They're going to create tax revenue that's going to help our state and maybe take some burden for the needs that we have as a state off of our existing citizens. However, we shouldn't be foolish about how we do that. If we believe that our Tennessee values matter more than corporate, corporation like Starbucks coming in and bringing whatever money they made, and we got to stand tough for that. We got to stand up and say, as John says, you're going to be more comfortable in downtown Seattle than you're going to be interacting with folks from McMinnville. I can tell you that. And I would also advocate that when we're having these discussions as a state, Tennessee needs an experienced executive in the role of executive of our state. We cannot afford someone who has never led people, who has never signed the front of a paycheck, who doesn't understand the responsibility that comes with having people count on you. And John brings that to the table. He talked about his software business that he started. Recently I saw on social media, there was a family photo popped up, and it was a high school graduation. And there was a young man who was being celebrated. He had his robe on and his cap, and his parents were just beaming with pride. He had an older brother who was in college and one who had just finished college and had gotten a job. The parents in that picture, the father of that family, is someone who's worked for John in his business for over 20 years. And it made my heart swell with pride and happiness just knowing that in those times, like during the recession, when John was not able to pay himself, God blessed him with enough wisdom and the ability to be able to pay his employees and keep them on the job. And our state deserves a leader who knows what it means to have Tennessee families counting on you when it matters most. And he brings that experience to the table.
And I might just add to that, just because y'all will get a kick out of this, and I know you will, Senator Bowling. Companies like Starbucks come to Tennessee, and they arrive here, and pretty early on, they usually say, we think y'all are a little backward. Your values are out of step. And sometimes they'll say, y'all are behaving like Neanderthals. Well, I'll tell you this, Neanderthals knew the difference between a man and a woman. But I'm not sure Starbucks does.
Amen. I think we can all preach a sermon on the reasons we probably don't want to give $30 million to get Starbucks to come in and start contaminating the state of Tennessee. Another question, though, what are we going to do about these data centers?
And this is a good question, and I've talked with some of the media about that in recent days, and at these events that we've been having across the state. I know this is coming up, and I know it's an issue that's right on the hot plate here in Warren County. And so what I would tell you is we have to be very careful, but we also have to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I would tell you not all data centers are created equally, and I'll give you two examples, and that might help to frame how you take this on, Mayor, here locally, and how we take it on as a state. So I'll give you a study in contrast. Up on the plateau in the eastern end of my district, we have an electric co-op that talks with me, and here a while back they were sharing with me their top 10 customers in this area, and The number one customer they have is a manufacturing business that is the biggest user of electric power in that community. And they have 1,000 employees. And that kind of makes sense. Their number two user of electricity is a data center. And it has 8 employees. Now that's a problem, right? Because that electricity that's going to that data center, it's not available to create that next employer that might create 1,000 jobs. And those 8 jobs are not, it's not like those are the best jobs in the community. They maybe are okay jobs, but they're just 8 of them. And so when we're weighing these things, we've got to be leery of these data centers that come in, and what do they bring to us? What do they require of us? And how much of our resources are they going to consume? Electricity, water, how much, is there going to be pollution, sound, et cetera, that come from these things? So we've got to look at that carefully. At the other end of the spectrum, though, here a couple of months ago, I was in Shelby County, Memphis. And some of you may remember that a couple of years back, Elon Musk, who's been much in the news and very successful, he announced that he was going to build the world's most powerful supercomputer in Memphis, Tennessee, Shelby County. And a lot of people were surprised because, Shelby County's had its issues of late. Crime is a problem there. Education is a problem. And so it seemed a little unlikely that Elon Musk would pick Memphis, Tennessee, but he did nonetheless. Well, what's the update on that story? 2 years ago, well, he did build the largest and most powerful supercomputer in the world in Shelby County, and it's operating today and was finished more than a year ago, by the way. Something to take pride in, that we have the most powerful single computer in the whole world operating in our state. He has created literally several thousand jobs in the process of doing that. Here's the really exciting thing that I would tell you about that I think starts to put this in perspective. About 8 months ago, October of last year, he announced that they were going to more than double the size. In fact, by the magnitude of several times, they were going to increase the size of that supercomputer. They started that project in October of last year, and that second phase went live in mid-March. It is a $49 billion investment in Tennessee completed in less than 6 months. Folks, that's a pretty exciting and astounding thing. And again, thousands of jobs there, and they're not going to stop. Well, you might say, okay, but that's a lot of electricity. And that's true, but they're building their own power generation to go with this facility. And even more exciting, takes a lot of water to cool a computer that big. They're using the sewer water coming from Memphis to cool the computer and then treating it at no charge for the city of Memphis. So I would tell you that's the contrast, that we have this powerful computer in our state that will power the future for our nation. And then let's balance that across the country and think about it. If we don't build some of these facilities here, they'll get built somewhere else. And we don't want all of our data and all of that computing power happening in China. We want it happening here in our country. And so we have to balance this. And I know it's frightening in some cases, but we don't need to just view these things as a monolith. We need to compare and contrast and think about, does this one make sense? Does it make sense for our community? Does it make sense for the people that live in our community? Does it make sense for our country? Can we afford the power that it will take to run it? This generation of young Americans have at their fingertips the most powerful tool in the history of humankind. Like any powerful tool, it can be used for good, it can be used for bad. It's up to our policymakers, and I see Paul Sherrill, Representative Sherrill back here. We need smart people thinking about these issues thoughtfully and deciding, is this the right choice for our community? That's kind of my approach. There will be times when we need to say no, just like I think Starbucks is one of those times. There'll be times when we need to say no to data centers. There'll be other times when we should probably say yes.
Yeah, and I remember during COVID when we were having to rely on China for so many of our pharmaceuticals, not to mention chips. Everyone's heard about that issue, which restricts our ability to build so many of the products that we use. And the last thing that we want is China, who's notorious for ripping off all of the good ideas that we have in America, to have it right there at their fingertips. So I agree, wise growth is the smart thing.
Do you have a comment there?
Well, that's something that Warren County is facing right now. We're going to struggle with that issue right now, but there's not a lot of regulations, and we want to make sure everything's done the safe way for the community.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the challenges that Tennessee faces in this time of unprecedented growth. And you know, as we try to make sure we hang on to what makes this state special, is that we've got to have thoughtful leadership. And that means electing good people, and that means those people rolling up their sleeves and working hard. You know, the job of being governor is, yes, that's very good, yeah. The job of being governor is a job that requires, you know, I would argue experience, and we want to hire somebody who has some of that experience. It's also not a retirement job. And some people who want this job may be tired of years of service and they want to come home and be closer to home. This is not a retirement job. It's not a reward for past service, and it's not a reward for being the first of a kind. So we need somebody who's willing to roll up their sleeves, go to work, has the experience and knowledge to be successful at doing the work that you need done for this state.
I just want to also ask everyone here, if you're willing, when you go home tonight or tomorrow, please take a look at the donors of the people running for governor of Tennessee. I think that's important for you to know, and especially as we talk about issues like data centers. You know, I also came up through the FFA, and I know Martin Grissom's here, who I got to take him around on a state star tour one year when he was Tennessee's star farmer for the FFA. Glad you're here. One of the lines in the ceremony that opens FFA meetings is, George Washington was better able to serve his country because he was financially independent. So having someone who's accepting large donations from Silicon Valley donors who would love to come here and put a data center right there might ensure that they indeed get that done. And I'm proud to say that 92% of John's campaign contributions have come from Tennessee. His opponent, Senator Blackburn, has only received 24% of her donations from inside the state of Tennessee.
Very telling indeed. And I would just like to say at that point that knowing that John is so knowledgeable with engineering, with agriculture, with running a business, and all the things that we need a governor to understand how to administer and how to really do that job is going to be a breath of fresh air. Because as legislators, we need to legislate, but we need someone there in the administration, the executive branch, that really understands how to manage all the different departments of the state of Tennessee to make sure that we're getting the things that we need and not selling our soul to Starbucks because they say they'll give us $30 million if they come. So I just think that that's a very telling thing. But right now, speaking of the President of the United States of America, what is your record in supporting President Trump?
Well, thank you for that question. And I'll start answering that by saying, you know, I ran for Congress because I was worried about the future of the country. And I frankly believed that what actually gave rise to that discussion in our household was Chelsea and I were walking down a country road, unlike the one out front here. And I was grousing about where we stood as a country. And she challenged me. She said, well, what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I'm doing things about it. I support good candidates like Janice Bowling, and I talk to them and tell them what I think about the issues.
And by the way, we were picking up trash off the side of the road, and I had been complaining about the trash, and he asked me what I was doing about it. So it was kind of a roundabout thing.
So she says, well, you're phoning it in. And I said, well, what do you think I should do? And she said, you should run for office. And so I'm saying all that to say it's her fault that we're sitting here tonight. That started a conversation, and that's what caused me to run. But beyond that, as we were having that conversation that day, I was very frustrated, as I suspect many of you were in 2017 and 2018, because Republicans controlled Congress. And our Republican leaders, people like Mitch McConnell, were not backing President Trump. In fact, they were working at cross purposes to him, and I was deeply concerned about that. And so I wanted to go to Washington to actually help the president. So that's what motivated me to go. And, you know, the people of the 6th District were kind enough to elect me in 2018, and I got there. Unfortunately, because Republicans had failed so utterly, in my view, to deliver during those first 2 years and had not backed the president, we lost control of Congress that year. We lost the House, and then a couple of years later, we lost the Senate. And then President Trump obviously was put out of office in 2020, which we can talk about that maybe more tonight. But so I went to support the president. But here's the way I'll answer the question about supporting the president. Two things I'll say. Number one is I have a 100% lifetime voting record with Heritage Action, one of the groups that keeps up with how conservative you vote in Congress. When I ran for Congress, that was one of the things I got a lot of harassment about. Well, you're a no-record Republican, they would say. And I said, well, that's true, but I can tell you about what I think and what I feel and how I pledge to vote. Well, today I have that record. My lifetime voting record is 100%. And now, as it pertains to Trump, I'll just share a story with you. Here a few weeks ago, almost 2 months ago, I was in Memphis for the president's roundtable on the Memphis Safe Task Force. As you know, crime is a problem in Memphis, and the president has tried to address that. In fact, he's very successfully addressed that. Crime in Memphis is down almost 50% this year. So that's a pretty remarkable accomplishment, I would tell you. The president came to kind of take stock of that. And I was lucky enough to get to be one of the members of Congress that got to fly with him on Air Force One from Memphis back to Washington. Now, I'll tell you, that's a pinch me moment. If you ever get invited, don't hesitate, Lisa Z. You just say yes, right? You get on that flight. And so I flew back to Washington, and most of the congressional delegation was on that plane. Our 2 senators and 6 of the members of Congress. And the 6 members of Congress, we're in the president's conference room together, the House members. And the president walks in and he says, John, how's your campaign going? And so I gave him a recap of the campaign. So I was pretty thrilled to do that in front of my colleagues, 1 or 2 of which have endorsed my opponent. And so you can imagine, it's like my chest is swelling pride there a little bit. And then the president listens dutifully, and he sits down at the head of the table, and he's up above the 6 of us, 5 of my colleagues and me, and he says, I'm not going to endorse her. And it was a quiet moment in that room, as you might imagine. And he said, and I'm not going to endorse her because John, and he points at me like this, because John has been with me 100% of the time, and she hasn't. And he's right.
And he is right. And there are many of us who remember that January 6th, where we received pledges from people that they would not accept that electoral count because we knew there'd been mischief in that election. And I was told by our 2 senators that they would not vote to accept that. And they violated their word. John said he would not accept those, and you had trouble with several of the states. The results, they're just not legitimate, you could tell. And so it matters when people give their word.
That's right. And that vote wasn't about who he wanted the president to be. That was about election integrity.
Right.
And right now, President Trump is fighting, and John alongside him, to ensure that when any American goes to vote in an election, they should be required to show their photo ID. Do you agree with that? Yeah. It's common sense, but it's something that, despite the fact that, 83% of Americans, that includes Democrats, anyone, whatever party they're in, they agree that you should have to show your ID to vote to, just prove you're a citizen and that you are eligible to vote. In Tennessee, we do that now, but they don't do that all over the country. And so election integrity matters, because when Arizona fails to run a sound election, they are essentially stealing our votes right here in Tennessee because we did it correctly. And so he stood up for that, and I'm glad that he did.
And thank you. I might say just a bit more about that, and we're here mostly talking about what's happening in Tennessee, but I want to digress about that because it's appropriate here. You know, the President of the United States right now has said repeatedly, and he specifically said this to the United States Senate, the most important thing you could do is to pass the Save America Act. And the Save America Act is the bill that's passed the House 3 times. I voted yes for it 3 times. The Senate has stopped it 3 times now. And the president says this is the most important bill in Congress. And what does it require? It requires that you prove you're a U.S. citizen in order to register to vote. And it requires that states require a photo ID when you show up to vote. And Chelsea's right, 83%. Think about that. 83% of Americans agree. Over 90% of Republicans, over 70% of Democrats agree. Well, this passed through the House 3 times. How many Democrats do you think have voted for it? 0. But the real frustrating thing is we can't get it passed through the Senate. And why can't we get it passed through the Senate? Because the leader of the Senate, a Republican, much like Mitch McConnell back in 2017 and 2018, he's standing in the way. John Boone, the majority leader of the Senate, because of the filibuster rule. So, and you know, we could debate that all night, but here's the reality. We've made a promise to the American people. The president's made promises to the American people, but we're not delivering, and we're not delivering because of the filibuster rule. Filibuster rule says if one senator objects, you got to have 60 to override that objection. And that hasn't always been the rule, by the way. Some people think that goes all the way back to the founding of the country. That's not so. That only became the operational rule in the Senate in the 70s. How many times, anybody want to guess how many times Republicans have had a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate? That is 60 votes. How many times do you think that's ever been true? Never. 0. So as Republicans, we're putting one hand behind our back when we need both hands to get the work done, and we're pretending that we can't just bring that other hand out and do what we promised. So I have a homework assignment for you. Call your senators and tell them, make your leader get the job done. Get the job done.
Well, this is going to segue kind of into this next question. This will be my last question. Why should I cast my vote for you over anyone else that's running?
Well, thank you. And I get this question a lot, and it's an appropriate question. And the answer is pretty straightforward. You know, the job of being governor of Tennessee is the job of being CEO of our state. I mean, that's fundamentally the job description. So it's the job of leading the state and leading state government. So state government has over 40,000 employees. If you add teachers in, over 100,000 employees. You know, if we were all together to hire someone to run our company, and the state's not a company, but it's a lot like a business. If we were hiring somebody, we'd probably ask for a resume, and we'd look at that resume and we'd say, and Mayor, you do this, executive, you do this all the time, right? And a lot of people here who hire people, you do this, and you'd look at that resume and you would say, does this person have the experience that the job calls for? Well, the job of being governor is the job of being that executive leader of this state. A lot of times when I get resumes, if they don't have the relevant experience, I don't even interview them, right? Why should I? Because they don't really bring to the table. Of the 21, 22 candidates running for governor in Tennessee, I'm the only one, including among the 3 Republicans, who has the relevant experience. I think Tennesseans get that because if you think about the governors we've hired in my lifetime, most of them have brought that private sector business leader experience to the table. Think about even the Democrats we've elected have brought that to the table. So I think Tennesseans understand that. Today, I represent the 6th District in Congress, and I've done that for 7.5 years. And that's been a learning experience for me. I've learned a lot about politics. I've learned a lot about Congress and how our country works and how our government works. But if that was the only line on my resume, you shouldn't hire me. It's the work I did, that I've done and continue to do, leading businesses, building businesses, that I think qualify me. So I know, as Chelsea talked about earlier, I know what it's like to sign the front side of a paycheck. I know what it's like to find the right people to whom to delegate important responsibilities to. And that's what we need in our next governor. And if you don't hire somebody who has that experience, then guess what we're going to get? We're going to get on-the-job training, right? And if you hire somebody who's retiring, in addition to not having the experience, how much training are they going to have an appetite for? And so we're going to pay a lot of what I called in my business always stupid tax. Now, sometimes it was my own stupidity because I had to learn on the job. When you start a business, that's the way it goes. And so I would tell you that's the reason that I believe I'm the best pick. Now, I'll be a bit modest and I'll tell you, maybe I'm not the most qualified person in all Tennessee, but I'm definitely the only person running for governor who's qualified to do the job.
And I would, my summary of the things I've heard John say since he announced his candidacy for governor more than a year ago is that the person who comes first in his campaign is the everyday Tennessean. I believe that it's time we had a governor elected who does not call an affluent county their home, someone who comes from a rural place. We live and farm over in Smith and DeKalb County, not 45 minutes from right here. We live in a farmhouse that was built by his great-great-grandparents in 1874. Our boys share a bedroom, I mean, our boys go to public schools and we go to church in Cookeville, and he drives to Nashville for his business, and we get what it's like to be an everyday Tennessean. We fill up our pump at the gas station just like you do. We grocery shop at the Walmart in Smithville or in Carthage, depending on where I am. And I know that nowadays, if you're going to buy a pound of ground beef at the grocery store, heaven forbid, you're going to pay about $7 to $8. If you're going to buy milk, you're going to pay somewhere around $4. You're going to pay around $4 for a carton of eggs these days in the grocery store. And hopefully for a lot of us tonight under this pavilion, we can do that because we have to. But there are Tennesseans, when the price of milk changes 50 cents or $1, or when gas goes from $2.17 to $4.17, that means they have to stay home. Sometimes it means they can't stay in their home. And there are children who count on their parents in order to keep a roof over their head. And the pressure that Tennesseans are feeling right now is real. We need a governor who's committed to putting the everyday Tennessean first, to keeping your taxes low, to making sure that you have safe roads to drive on, and to making sure that you have great schools to take your kids to, because that's our future. And we cannot get priced out of our own state. We should not let that happen. We need to protect Tennessee.
Don, being a farmer, this is something that I think most farmers in Warren County are concerned about. What are we going to do about the developing farmland, and how are we going to put a stop to it? Because we're losing our family farms, which is, to me, is the backbone of Tennessee.
Absolutely. And again, one of the questions that I hear a lot, and as I mentioned to you, the top three things I hear kind of overarching is this maintaining, protecting Tennessee, which means not only the natural beauty, our farmland, our open spaces, but also the values. And so how are we going to do that? Well, what I would tell you as a farmer and as somebody who's led in the agricultural space, and it's, by the way, an honor of mine to serve right now on the House Ag Committee, and we've passed a farm bill through the House. Again, it's waiting for the Senate. It's a common problem. Senator Bowling, the U.S. Senate, they seem to have trouble getting their work done. But so I know what it's like from the policy perspective side, and from the time I served as Commissioner of Agriculture in Tennessee, I've thought about this a lot, and of course studied agricultural economics. And my big sister Radonna, dealt with this issue and led on it at the Farm Bureau for many years. So there's a number of things that I think we can do and should do. And I'm not saying, though, that it's easy. I think this is a hard issue, frankly, because, and for reasons I'll state in a moment. So the number one way to address this is farm profitability. We need to do everything we can to help our farmers be successful farming. And so just like the Walkers here, if they're making money on this beautiful farm, then they want to keep it and continue to operate it. And there's a very good chance that the next generation will want to do the same thing. And for the farmers that are here today, like the Grissom's, that's what you see happen. And that's what we hope will happen in our family. So farm profitability is the answer to it's the big overarching answer. Well, what can we do about that? We can help our farmers find ways to be successful. One of the things we can do there is at the national level, we can advocate for the kind of trade policies that we see President Trump trying to advocate for, to open markets to our products and find out to sell the commodities that we produce. That's important. We can work to advance policies that keep input prices under control. You know, the opposite of what we saw during the Biden years when we saw all this runaway inflation that has put farmers today in a cost price squeeze. You know, if you think about it, during the Biden years, the price for inputs for farmers went up 20 to 40% conservatively, just like the price at the grocery counter and everywhere else went up. But for farmers, commodity prices fell during that same period. Why did they fall? Because President Biden failed to negotiate a single trade deal in all 4 years. He didn't even try. I mean, it's not failed. He failed to try. And so we find ourselves today as a net importer of food. My goodness, Sheriff, this country is importing food. Now look out across through here, and do you think we need to be importing food to the United States of America? Should we be dependent on other countries to produce the food we need? Absolutely not. And so we've got to do that. What can the governor do? Well, the governor, I think, can work to make sure that we have the infrastructure to support our farmers, the roads and the railways and the river waterways to get products to market, to get inputs to our farmers. We can work to make sure that our farmers have their research and development happening so that they can be more efficient and profitable in how they go about producing our food. You know, every generation of American farmers in the history of this country has had to make the choice. Are we going to adopt new technology or are we going to fall behind? It is not a choice, right? We have to continue to get better at what we do. And the state can have a role through our land grant institutions, through our extension services, through our soil and water conservation efforts to help farmers become better at what they're doing. And no country has done that better than this country, and no state, frankly, I would say better than Tennessee. So we got to do all of those things so that farmers can continue to move forward and advance. There's some other policies that we can adopt as a state. So we have a Greenbelt law in this state that helps to keep taxes on farm property under control. We have the farmland preservation effort that's been started recently to help farmers find ways to secure for generations to come their land and make sure that it's not developed and yet reward them so that they're not giving up their property rights. These are the kinds of programs that we can have. For farmers, I would tell you, we need to always make sure when it comes to land use planning that the farmers have a seat at the table. You know, there's the old adage, if you don't have a seat at the table, then that may be a signal that you're on the menu. And so we need to fight to make sure that we're doing all of these things to help to safeguard. I've left one out. That's the agricultural, the sales tax exemption for agricultural inputs. You know, and why that? I mean, that may seem like a special favor to agriculture, but the truth is, if we tax farmers on the inputs they're using to produce food, and then you get taxed on those food products, what's that? That's double taxation. So these are the kinds of things policies that we have that we can improve on that I will think will help. Ultimately, though, there's some really tough choices out there that we have to think about as a state, and that is, how do we plan the use of our land while also having proper respect for property rights in this state, which are all important as well.
Yes, we've seen out of control development in Tennessee, no question about it. We have to get it under control. I think one of the easy things we can do to protect farmers is that you need a governor who's going to vow that he will never allow China to buy farmland in Tennessee, ever. And I don't think it would hurt to have a farmer as governor. How about you? I think that might help as well. We need someone who understands what farmers are going through. There's also the TAEP, the Tennessee Agricultural Enhancement Program. It's a cost share program offered through the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. It's actually less than what our state is paying Starbucks to come and open a regional headquarters in our state. $26 million versus $30 million. And there are farmers across this state who use that fund to expand their enterprise and improve their farm. And we have got to make sure that we can keep our food local. Just like I don't want to depend on China to store my data and information. I don't want to depend on China, and I really don't like depending on Brazil and Argentina for my food. I'd like to have food from a Tennessee farmer.
And just one last thing. Chelsea mentioned the Tennessee Agricultural Enhancement Program. There are a bunch of people in this room who have participated in that program in one way or another. And as I think just today, I had a visit with one of the farms here in Warren County, and they said, we're a product of that program. We're in business today doing what we do because of the Agricultural Enhancement Program. And I think it is kind of the poster child for how you take state assistance and use it in a way that leverages what is already happening and provides the encouragement to farmers. So these are the things that I think we can continue to do and hone in on exactly how to do them the best so that we keep agriculture thriving in Tennessee.
John, as you know, the school vouchers have been a really hot topic in Tennessee, so we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. I said early on, I'm a product of public schools myself, and my mom was a teacher. Radonna back here was a teacher. My oldest sister was a teacher, her husband a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. So I come from this long line of family members, and that's probably true for most everybody here. You've got some connection to that. The debate in Tennessee for in recent years, last 2 or 3 years, has been around this question of, some people would say vouchers, some people would say school choice, and the idea being some parents in Tennessee find themselves in situations where they're either in a bad school district, they believe, or they're not satisfied that the school district that their children would go to, the public school district, would provide for their kids. And so they're looking for options. And the question has been, do we want parents to have those options? And I think most Tennesseans would agree, if you frame the question that way, yeah, we want parents to have options. And so I'm not against that. I would be supportive of that. But I think we have to take stock of the reality that we face as a state. And that is this. Even today, with the choices that are out there and the choices that parents make for homeschooling and private schools, parochial schools, religious schools, 89% of our kids are going to graduate from a Tennessee public school. That's just the brass tacks today. One of the commitments, because of that reality, one of the commitments I made on the first day that I announced I was running is that if you hire me to be governor of Tennessee, you elect me to be the governor, we will have a commissioner of education in Tennessee who has spent time teaching in a Tennessee public school classroom. Now, why? I mean, I probably don't have to tell y'all why, but I mean, we can't expect those 60,000 teachers that I referred to earlier to be real keen on having a commissioner of education from, say, California or Texas or Washington, D.C. to lead them. Because, and particularly one who's never held the chalk at the front of a school classroom. And so those teachers deserve to have someone who understands the challenges that they face. And so I think that's a starting point. So while I think it is fine to try to help parents have options, we have to keep in mind that if we're not getting the job done in the public school arena as a state, we're failing. And that has to come first. And so whatever we do, we need to make sure that we're measuring the success of our students on an equal footing, on a level playing field. So we have to make sure that we are demanding accountability. And in the public school arena, I would tell you, we have to have a governor that not only is demanding outcomes and putting the right people in the right seats on the bus, as we would say in the management perspective, but we have a governor who's willing to take on the woke interests that have embedded themselves into education. And so one of the commitments I will make to you is that not only do we work hard to make sure that we have the right standards for our schools, not only do we work hard to make sure we're measuring the success, But between those standards and that measurement of success, we've got to have the right approach to education, which I believe is classical education. And we have to have a curriculum that is in sync with the values of Tennesseans. So that means, and Chelsea and I are going to have a unique perspective. We're going to be on the front row of this because we've got a second grader. He's rising into the third grade this next year. And our youngest son, Sam, who you heard from earlier, he's going to start. So we're going to be, unlike governor in recent years in Tennessee, we're going to be able to take stock about what's happening in our public schools and the choice we've made, because we're big believers in how we think that will serve our family and our kids.
I would add to this discussion about schools and vouchers that if the state of Tennessee is going to make investment in helping families send their children to schools other than public schools, we deserve to see the outcomes of that program. They should not be hidden from us. We should have transparency about who has taken the vouchers, how have they been used, because that's the only way we can measure success. And so if you elect John, you're going to get transparency from your Department of Education. It's not going to be hiding information to tell a certain narrative. We can't afford to do that for our children, and here's why it matters. He mentioned that we're parents of a public school student. You know, his family came from the Mount Airy area of North Carolina in 1790, and they had 11 children in a wagon and some animals, and they were coming here to the bends of the Caney Fork River to claim a Revolutionary War land grant. And they spent months making this journey. I'm ashamed to say that despite that legacy, I struggled to get our son to school on time with the use of a Chevrolet, but I do my best. One morning I was pulling into school. I saw Sheriff Matheny around here somewhere, and I know you probably get people like me speeding all the way to school all the time. But anyway, thank you for being here tonight. And I was rushing to school, and I was pulling into the parking lot, and in front of me was a car that looked like it was on its last leg. I mean, we called it a beater growing up where I did in Tennessee. And I was pulling in behind this car, and out of the passenger side gets this pretty little girl. And she has a ponytail, and she has a backpack that's bigger than she is. And she does not seem bothered one bit that she is a little bit late to school. She starts bebopping into the building, and out of the driver's side gets a man, and he's wearing all black. And as he turns around to walk around the car, I see he's wearing a Waffle House cap and an apron that is just absolutely covered and dirty. And it occurs to me that this man, who is likely her father, he got up before it was light outside. He put on his uniform. He went to work. He worked an hourly wage, probably a low hourly wage. He hustled at his job, and then he hustled out the door to go pick up his little girl, and he fell just a little bit short. It didn't bother her because she walked through the doors of a school where teachers, despite what the state may do with their money, they'll go the extra mile and they'll buy the supplies that they need for their classroom if they don't get it from the school system or from the state. And they'll stay after school, and they'll work with students who need a little extra attention. Those are the kind of educators that we have in places like Warren County. And if you're a teacher, or you know a teacher, or you've been a teacher, I say thank you to those people. Because through the doors of our public schools is where opportunity lies for every single Tennessee student. And what we want to deliver is equal opportunity. Not equity. You'll hear people on the other side talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they try to lure you into that by saying that we're going to provide someone who didn't start out life in the same place as another kid with an advantage. Well, that doesn't really fix the problem either. That's not the American way. If you give students, regardless of their background and what they left behind on the school bus or behind the front door that they walked out of that morning, if you give them an equal opportunity for a shot at their Tennessee dream, they will surprise you. And I'm proud to say that that little girl is getting an experience, the same experience that the son of a United States congressman is getting, and she deserves it, and so do all of our Tennessee students.
John is an elected official. Most of us that are elected officials, our faith in God is important, and we want to know how you would keep that in our state.
Sure. Well, thank you for that question, and hopefully many of you know this. Hopefully I display this, but I was blessed, as I said earlier, to grow up in a great Christian home. One of my good friends used to say, "John, you did a heck of a job picking your parents," and he was very right about that. And so, I had a great upbringing, and proud to say, and as I look out across the fields here, and I was talking earlier with Tim Hitchcock about my experience growing up on our farm and combining. I remember well, I was in the 4th grade, and one of the highlights of my year was when we combined. It was dirty, awful work in some regards, but we produced Kentucky 31 tall fescue seed. Some of you probably combined. I know I talked to some people that have combined fescue seed. It was a little bit later than this, usually around the 10th of June or so, when we would combine our fescue seed on our farm. And I was looking forward to that. And my mom came to me and she said, "No, you're going to go to Vacation Bible School." And I was devastated, I'll have to tell you, because I was wanting to go to the farm and work, and be with my dad and my siblings. And so I had to stay at home and go to Bible school that week. But my mom probably was perceptive enough to know where I was in my progression. And that week I accepted Christ and was baptized as a young man and came to know Christ. And I say that because that is clearly first. Chelsea said earlier, faith, family, freedom, in that order. Faith comes first. And here we are today. It's not that far from the Easter season. And I reflect on what I had learned as a young man, and what was motivating and calling out to my heart was the knock at the door, so to speak, was that, our God loves us. He created us. We fell from grace and we were utterly lost. And God, no doubt, saw this all coming. It was part of the plan that he had, knew what was going to happen, and he had a plan to fix it. And the plan was, the only way to redeem us is through the sacrifice of perfect, faultless blood. And so he came here himself in human form, in the form of Jesus Christ. And he lived that perfect life among us. And we crucified him. He knew that was going to happen. We killed him on the cross. He gave that perfect life, shed that perfect blood, so that if we could believe and have faith in him. He rose on the 3rd day to show us the power of redemption and his power. And so through faith, we can be forgiven for our failings, for our sin. It's that gives me hope, knowing that I have achieved eternity through the gift of my Lord and Savior. And it is that will inform how I approach the job of being governor of Tennessee, if you give me that job, and how I approach life, regardless of whether I get that job or not, is the assurance and the certainty of knowing that eternity is resolved for me. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And so then, through the combination of that, immeasurable gift and the example of Christ and the good Lord's word expressed to us in the Holy Bible, those are the principles that we need to lead this country. Now, the founders told us, they said, they've given us a form of government that was only suited for a moral people. We have to take stock of that fact. And so we need leaders who are not ashamed to say what they believe. And that's how I would approach, and that's the impact that faith has on my life.
That 250 years ago, an amazing generation of people escaped tyranny from across the ocean. They came from a place where they were told what they needed to believe and how they needed to worship, and if they didn't, they would be in trouble for that. We never want to be that way in America, and as Christians, We know that we worship the one true God. And if that's true, we don't have to legislate to people to tell them what to believe. They will discover it because they'll know we are Christians by our love, and they will want to follow us. They will want to worship the God that we do because they'll see the joy that we have. They'll see the love that we have for one another, and they'll want to be part of that. So we believe in your constitutional rights. We believe that there are people in our community who may not view the world like we do. They may not recognize God as our almighty creator. And we should allow them to peacefully exist in this nation. And we can do everything within our ability as citizens to convince them what they should do is to pick up the mantle and follow Christ because their life will be better for it. We should never force them to do that. We believe in your Second Amendment rights as well. It's not the right of government to tell you when and where you can carry a firearm. You have a constitutional right to carry your firearm, and Tennessee should have true constitutional carry. I think we'll bring a lot more people into our tent by expressing the ideal of freedom than we will by causing them to believe exactly the same way we do. That's the way we live our life. We hope that people can know that we're Christians by our love, not because we force them to believe the same thing that we believe.
I think John has time for maybe one more question. Is there any question from the audience that's not been answered here tonight that anybody would love to ask John?
Tell everybody that's here to go pass the word to several others, make sure their family can buy their money. So we can get a big government.
That's right. That's right. And thanks to you two. Thanks to Jana. Thank you both for helping us to spread that word and for everyone for coming out tonight and participating in this. We owe it to our founders to come out and participate in the process of deciding who the next leaders for our state will be. We owe that to them.
One more thing before y'all get out here. Jerry Prater can fix you a special plate. Right there in the place for you to get until y'all get away from there. You got a real nice meal.
I noticed them packing it up, and I was getting a little nervous and antsy over here. It smells pretty good. So.
When it comes to food, Gary will take it.
Well, and I would say that Ammon has always taken care of me wherever we am. He will get me a plate of food. Did you get my? He's got it. Thank you, Ammon.
Mr. Dale Wood.
Talked about $31 million going to Starbucks for coffee. Average age of our farmers today is 65 years of age. There's no 30-year-old farmers coming on. We can talk about food security all we want to. Why can't we come up with $31 million to start a young farmers program to help offset the cost, the land cost, and the upfront cost to put a young man in the farming? Also, we got to wake up. We're going to be eating their food from China. We got to stop. We need to look at these boys coming out of the college agriculture. They want to be in production agriculture. We need to find $31 million for them. There's nothing else to pay the interest on their loans. We might give them the money, but if we just subsidize interest on their loans, they can be profitable. And once they get 10 years down the road, most of the time they make it. But folks, try to start today with $10,000 acre, $4,000 cows, and $100,000 tractors, and try to make it 7 cows.
Yeah.
We need that $31 million put back in agriculture. Our number one industry in this state is agriculture. And we keep putting money everywhere else instead of in our agriculture.
That's right. I completely agree. This is one of the reasons, and we'll do that. This is one of the reasons that both Chelsea and I have been big believers in agricultural education, FFA, and 4-H. These things set the stage for these young people. It attracts them in, and I've seen in my lifetime a sea change there. When in the 80s, when I was coming through agricultural education and FFA, there were tough times in agriculture, and not a lot of kids wanted to go into farming and agriculture. And I'm proud today that there are far greater numbers involved, and that as a state, we're supporting them. It's one of the things I would take my hat off to Bill Lee for, is because he has stepped up to the plate to support agricultural education and FFA. I just got to see him earlier today over in Van Buren County, and I tried to, his schedule wouldn't allow it, but there was a huge crowd of FFA members there to help celebrate America's 250th birthday. And This is one of the things that we've got to do. And you're right. We should be making those investments. And I think that contrast is important. And I think it is goes back to this question of what do I bring that others don't, is that innate understanding of that. And so I think it matters who governs. And in this case, I think it makes a lot of difference for our state and the future of our state. I think we've got a question straight back. Yeah.
All right, we have a question from our live here. It says, it's from David Collette. How will Mr. Rose work as governor to help give more money back to counties for highway improvements for local communities versus state-funded projects?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I hear this question, particularly from our road supervisors and Executive Bell. I know you probably hear the same thing all across the state. And particularly in our rural counties that depend on so often property taxes to make ends meet and don't have the robust sales taxes that some of our big urban counties have. And the story always goes like this. We've got X 100 miles of roads in our county, and this is the budget every year. And if you take those miles of road and you divide that budget among those miles, it's going to take us this many decades, and it's usually somewhere between 50 and 100 years to get around to all the roads in our counties. And that's probably true right here in this county.
True, right in Warren County.
And so, you know, we are not providing the resources that are needed to get there. We're just not marshaling the resources that are needed to maintain our roads. And the state has a problem. We haven't talked about it a lot tonight. It's actually the number one issue I hear about. By the way, the 5 issues that I hear about across the state are education, roads, access to health care, access to energy, and economic development, job creation. So roads, this is, and we've got to not only take on the challenges the state faces, Senator, but we've got to find a way to help counties address this. And so there are some proposals out there that would involve returning some of the tax revenues that today go to the state that are not dedicated for any particular purpose. And I think that would make a lot of sense. And a lot of those, like, for example, the real estate transfer tax, this is revenue that's being generated in counties because of the activities that are happening in those counties. I think it would make a lot of sense to dedicate a lot of those resources to helping counties meet the obligations that they have at home.
Mary Austin from Van Buren County. I just had a question. We have given our water to our water sewer plants to Warren County Utility District, and I feel they're doing a great job. You know, the other side of the mountain, for instance, we have the Fall Creek Falls Utility District, which is also failing. You can't get a tap on the Fall Creek Falls Water Utility District right now. What can you do as governor to help us with the infrastructure of the water and sewer department in Van Buren County?
Another great question. And so, you know, I said roads. Of those 5 issues, I usually say infrastructure, and obviously roads is a big part of that, but obviously there's water, wastewater, solid waste disposal, cellular service, broadband service, a whole array of infrastructure needs that our state has. And if we're going to be successful in as our businesses are going to be successful, our farms are going to be successful, we've got to address all of these issues. Water is increasingly one of those. And what the situation you're describing, I've heard all across this state. Some places it's more dire. Some places it's a result of bad management. Some places it's the result of there just not being enough water in the watershed area. And that's true down in southern Middle Tennessee, some of the areas that you represent along the Duck River, where we just don't have enough water. That's been something that as a state, historically, we haven't had as much of a problem with as, say, the western states have had. But increasingly, it's an issue here. And it comes from the growth and development and increased demands on our water resources. And so I think, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. And so, you know, we've kind of been careless in some ways, I would argue, with how we've managed our water resources through the years. We've had the luxury of not being careful. That luxury is going away. And so we've got to be smarter about it. I was just up in Cumberland County for one of these tour stops on Saturday, and they've been working cooperatively together up on the plateau. There's a shortage of water up there, and they've been combining their smaller utility districts to combine their resources, combine their thinking, and so to take on this issue. And I think those are the kinds of things that we've got to do. Is we've got to be sure that we can get the water where it's needed so that citizens of those areas can count on having the water that they need. Otherwise, we're basically telling our kids, you got to leave home because there's no more room for you here. And of course, this is again circles right back into the Starbucks issue. Starbucks is going to bring 2,000 people here. So hopefully some of those will be Tennesseans, but a lot of those will be people moving here from Seattle, Washington, and bringing their values with them. And then their demand on those resources that we have. And so it matters how we approach this. And so I think it's just a matter of, again, rolling up our sleeves. These things are not easy, from seeing this happen and being a part of it. Probably you just got to be smart. You got to work together. You got to find solutions. This is the kind of stuff that you do in business. I've negotiated business deals as a part of my successful business career. And one of the things I learned early on in that process is, sometimes you get the better end of the deal. And I've had business deals when I got everything I wanted. I got my way on all of it. Those turned out not to be such good business deals most of the time. And so having someone who understands that and who won't be a bully and trying to get their way and force their view on everyone, that's part of the process of good leadership and good management, and ultimately, I would say, good governance. And so I wish I could tell you there are silver bullets to solve these problems. I don't think there are, but there are good answers for how you get to the solutions that will serve Tennesseans. And so I think that's how we approach this problem.
It's a question of responsible growth. It's kind of hard to fathom, but Tennessee is the 15th most populous state in America. And we have 4 of the 100 fastest growing counties in the country right here in Tennessee. And it's up to us to protect what we have and to grow wisely and not get out of control. So one of the things that John has said on the campaign trail is that his choice for Commissioner of Economic and Community Development will be someone who commits that they won't measure their success by the number of ribbon cuttings that they attend. They will measure their success by the number of Tennessee businesses that are succeeding.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you close. I just want to thank you all for coming, though. But John will say a few farewell words to you. And if there's anything that you need, as he said, get in touch with his campaign. But for those of us who've determined and looked at the field, that we are definitely not only proud to support John, we are grateful that John and Chelsea and their family are willing to serve us in the capacity as governor of the state of Tennessee.
Thank you again, and thank you to the Walkers, and Mr. Prater, thank you, and Jana, thank you. Senator Bowling, good to see you. Executive Bell, thank you for being here. I'll just end this simply because I know the hour's late. It would be a great honor and privilege to represent you and serve you as governor of Tennessee. And so we hope that we can earn your vote, and I do ask you to vote. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.